So currently Dragon Age the Veilguard is sitting at a Metacritic score of 84 on PS5. But if we delete the 6 perfect scores, which let's be honest, no game can get a perfect score, there's always room for improvement, the Metacritic drops down to an 81. Now if we do the same for the PC, which is currently sitting at an 80 on Metacritic, we kick off that perfect score of 100, it actually drops down to a 78. And if we compare Veilguard scores with the previous entries in the Dragon Age series, it might give you a clearer idea of exactly where it sits. But first, there's gonna be a lot of math, and math makes me thirsty, so... Here are the scores for Dragon Age Origins, and here are the scores adjusted when we kick off all of those perfect scores. Now some of you guys with legendary 2020 vision are probably looking at the Xbox 360 score and thinking, hang on a minute, why didn't it go down? I'd love to have a good explanation for you guys, but to be honest, it doesn't surprise me that doing a simple average calculation has exposed some flaws in this system. Now I double and triple checked my numbers here, and when I add in the 6 perfect scores, the average score for me comes out to 87.544. I have no idea how Metacritic rated this an 86. I'll talk about more why this actually matters, but for now, moving on, let's just assume that there's nothing nefarious going on here. Here's the scores for Dragon Age 2. And here is the average scores if we take off all the perfect scores. Now there was only one perfect score for the Xbox 360, but I wanted to add these up anyway, just to see if there was any more inconsistencies in Metacritic's averages. And what do you know? Now I can totally understand why you might round up the PS3 score from 81.88 to an 82. But rounding up an 81.2, nah dude. But you know what? We're just going to let that slide. Don't worry about it. Nothing nefarious going on here, dude. This is rigid-ditch, 100% rock solid math going on here, okay? So here are the scores for Dragon Age Inquisition. And here are the averages when we take off all of the perfect scores. Now when I added the perfect scores back in, it became clear again that I have no idea how this rounding system works. But let's again just give Metacritic the benefit of the doubt and move on. So if we tally together the score for Dragon Age Origins, we get an 87.2. Dragon Age 2 gets an 80.7. Dragon Age Inquisition gets an 85.7. Now if we add up the scores for Dragon Age the Veilguard, it comes in at exactly 80, which puts it at the bottom of all the ratings for the entire Dragon Age series. Last place. Now take from that what you will, because like I said earlier, according to the critics, 8 out of 10 is still a pretty damn good game. It's still a review pending for Polygon, Kotaku, and what's the last one? Destructoid, which are all obviously kind of heavy hitters in the review department. So depending what they rate the game, the Metacritic could go up or down. Having said that though, I don't personally really give a shit what game critics have to say about any game. I tend to favor user scores more than critic scores, and I know that comes with its own ball of problems, because you get die-hard fans who are just like, it's a 10 out of 10, and then you get the haters who are just like, it's a 0 out of 10, right? So again, I like to just trim off all that trash, right? Just get rid of all of that, because that's nothing. That's just fans and haters kind of at the opposite end of the spectrum, just like hating and loving, just hate and love orgy. Now I know there's a lot of you that are probably thinking, dude, but who gives a shit about Metacritic? All of these scores, they don't mean anything. They don't matter. But these scores are actually used for marketing all the time. You see them. Every time a game releases, there's always these splash pages with 10s out of 10s, 9s out of 10s, 9.8s out of 10s. But for every 10 of you guys that actually have your eyes open and are immune to what these scores are actually saying, there's 100 or maybe even 1,000 people who are like, oh, but it's a 10 out of 10 game, must be good, buy it. So even though we'd like to think that these scores don't matter, it's places like IGN, GameSpot, Kotaku, Game Rant, and Metacritic, because a lot of people do turn to these reviews and these websites for information on whether or not to make their purchase. So why was I underlining the fact before about the disparity between how Metacritic rounds things up or rounds things down? Top 10s, top 20s, top 25s, top 50s, and top 100 lists are among the most searched terms on Google for anything. That's why there are so many videos out there that are like top 5 this, top 10 that, top 20 this, top 50 that. And as we move into the age of AI, these kind of search terms and these rankings on very highly visited websites are going to matter even more, because AI is going to reach out, look for these lists and look through these lists and make new lists and gather data based on those current lists. I know that's a lot. So I took a few random games off Metacritic and I added up the scores just to see where we were at, and it doesn't make any sense. Sometimes the result would be, for example, a 91.8, and that would get rounded down to a 91. And then other times the result would be a 91.2, but the Metacritic score is actually 92. Now, using Final Fantasy VII Rebirth as an example, the total average I got from all of the Metacritic scores on PS5 is 92.7. Now that places it at the 141st position of the highest rated games ever on Metacritic. But if it was a 93 and the score got rounded up, all of a sudden you're potentially looking at a top 100 game on Metacritic. Now Metaphor is currently sitting at position 86. It's a top 100 game, but the average score is only 93.1. So essentially what we've got here is some weird rounding system that is literally the only difference between whether your game shows up in a top 50 list or a top 10 list or not. Okay, so this is all well and good, but why else does this matter? Well, some devs will use Metacritic scores as a gauge for whether or not the company gets a bonus once the game has launched. For example, if we get an 85 on Metacritic, we all get bonuses. We get an 84, we don't get any bonuses. 1 point could be the difference between whether you, who have just slaved for 3 years, get 25 grand or nothing. 1 point. We come back to that rounding issue. Man, over the last day or so that I've been making this video, it's been clear to me that EA and Bioware have kind of created this pretty carefully curated nest of review scores. And as a game developer with history with this kind of stuff, my brain immediately goes to the fact that if you get a Metacritic score where the critic scores are high but the user scores are low, then it tends to favor the marketing department. It means the marketing department did a very good job. They carefully created this, they manipulated basically a situation. Bonus that I was talking about just before, that goes to the marketing department, not the game devs. And once again, I'm not saying that this actually happened in this circumstance with Bioware and Dragon Age Veilguard. I'm not saying that. And it's happened enough times that if you were to ask any game dev that's got 20, 25 years of history, they've probably heard of this. And if they haven't heard of something like this, they've probably been directly involved with something like this. They've been a part of something like this. Now, when you bear that in mind, and then you see the situation with Fextra Life, Wolfheart FPS, etc., why they didn't get review codes, it kind of starts to look a little more suspicious. And any reasonable person would think exactly the same thing, man. And if you don't know what I'm talking about with Fextra Life and Wolfheart, both of these, you guys know who Fextra Life is. They have been Dragon Age Veilguard shills basically for the longest time. They are all in, man. They've made so much Dragon Age Veilguard content, etc., etc. Their review of the preview was a little lukewarm. It wasn't super positive, and for some reason they didn't end up with an early access code. And when the common theme is we gave a kind of a lukewarm review between these content creators who didn't end up with a review code, when that's the common theme, and coupled with all the things I was just talking about, it just, I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Anyway, I'm definitely going to be playing Dragon Age the Veilguard on launch day. If you guys want a completely unbiased but unfiltered review or opinion on how the game looks, how it feels, how it plays, whether the dialogue, is delivered naturally, feel free to come through to that. I'll leave a link to the Twitch stream just down below. It won't be sponsored in any way, shape, or form, so I'm paying full price for the game, and that way I get to just say whatever I want to say about the game, positive or negative. So I hope to see you guys there. And remember, if you do come through, Spark up a conversation, man. Talk to me about what you think about the game, all the controversy that Bioware is going through, anything like that. Happy to talk about it openly. As always, let me know what you guys think about all this. I'm happy to engage with everybody. I tried to reply to as many comments as I possibly can. Thank you again to all of my Patreons, my supporters and subscribers here on YouTube, and everybody who comes through to Twitch and subscribes on Twitch. You guys are absolute legends, man. I really appreciate it. See you guys in the next one.